How you doing, friends? This is Bill MacDonald, the math, reading, writing, ELAR doctor. Today, I'm going to talk to you about main ideas, summaries, mostly about, and raise your hand if you have a hand. Yes, and we're going to have a hand on the test. And so I'm going to teach something that's very difficult for you third and fourth grade students and teachers, using something that's going to be pretty simple, my hand. Okay? All right. Now, my hand has fingers, and we're going to call those paragraphs. We'll call those sections, or we might call those sentences. Okay? If it's just one paragraph, then this would be the topic sentence, the main idea. This would be all the specific supporting sentences, and this would be the ending. If there's 7 or 8 sentences, then we would just add another finger or two, which you're gonna see a couple of times. Inside my hand here is my palm, and there's several things that I want to talk about. The reading passage and the writing passages, they have purposes. Sometimes if it's a editing or revising passage, there's a prompt they have to follow, P. You might get to be able to see in the passage the point of view, the perspective. Uh, Again, are we talking about one paragraph, one part, or the whole passage? And a lot of kids get confused about what the questions are asking. So we have to be careful to make sure we show them a way to check. Is this main idea about one paragraph, one part, one section, or is it about the whole passage? And so there's a big difference in terms of the way that we will look at it. Is it one passage, or is it a paired passage? Is it two different passages that have introductions, bodies, and conclusions? And we have to compare how the pair of passages work together. Okay? Is it a persuasive passage? So those are kind of some of the P's that would go in my palm. And so that you don't have to remember that, I went ahead and had my graphic organizer ready. This is called my readvising graphic organizer. And this is going to help students understand, like we talked about in writing for fourth grade, what's my central idea? Everything that the passage is about in my introduction, my body, and my conclusion. If I do this, that means loser. Well, TEA says if you have an introduction and you have a body but you have no ending, the only score you can get is a 2 or a 1, no matter how good the rest is. 7th grade calls it a controlling idea. So if I put my hand there for central and controlling idea, and I wiggle my muscles, I can feel them moving. But if I move it over here to my thumb, my introduction, and then I wiggle my muscles, I can't feel them moving anymore. So that would only be the main idea of that paragraph or that section. And so one way to teach your kids is how to use your hand as a main idea for a paragraph, a section, or a whole passage. In 9th grade, we call it a thesis. In 10th grade, we call it a position. We said, is it about a main idea of a paragraph? Is it a main idea? Is it mostly about a certain section? Just what they're saying is it a summary of all of the passage, the introduction, the body, and the conclusion? Or is it some of the passage? Is it one section? So What's the topic sentence? So all of these things are written here, and here we have the P's that I mentioned. And so what's happening is kids are not understanding main ideas of sections or some of the passage. They keep wanting to do main ideas of only one paragraph, or they try to go to the other extreme and they try to give you a main idea or a summary of the whole passage. We're going to look at 3 questions that talk about this, one from 3rd grade and 2 from 4th grade that scored very low on the 2019 test uh, in reading. So speaking of reading, I'm going to put on my reading glasses so I can read it easier. This is 3rd grade, question number 14, and it says, the section titled Stories to Read and Understand and Enjoy is mostly about. So as soon as you see the word section, make sure you underline it, because it didn't say paragraph, it said section. And stories is plural. And what are you supposed to do with them? You're going to read them and enjoy them. And so that title alone, and as you saw here, we have everything in a passage ties together. That title is going to help me understand the topic of that section. So we have to be careful that right away, as soon as we see the word section, we check and see, oh, what paragraphs are we talking about? Because mostly about is main idea, or if you want to call it a summary of paragraphs 5 through 7. Because when I go look at it, here we go. Paragraph 5 of Stories to Read and Enjoy is the first paragraph, but question number 14, and what I suggest you do, because it's at a section, what happened, I can tell a lot of your students only read that paragraph instead of going on to the next page and saying, oh, I also need to read paragraph 6 because it's part of that section. Some of your kids might have stopped once they got to the picture, but there's not a new section, there's not a new title or a subtitle, so they have to keep going, and you don't close your bracket until paragraph 7. And so if you believe in hashtagging, which I do, on the left side of each paragraph, you can write what is 5 words or less that talk about what's this paragraph mainly about, what is this paragraph mainly about, and what is this paragraph mainly about. And that way I can see, well, what is this section mostly about? Okay, so what I did for you is I didn't just leave this blank as my, and today we're using it as a reading graphic organizer, but reading is the content, and revising, when I flip it upside down, I can use the left side to do revising, to add, remove, replace, and move things. I can make things from vague to specific, or I can do reading where I say actors, and I still have another arms, if you want to call it arms for reading. Actors remember more story sequence, where we act out the section, or we act out the sentences. Or if we're trying to paint a picture, because they say a picture paints 1,000 words, I don't need 1,000 words. I just probably need 5 to 10. But if I draw a picture, artists remember more setting. What is this picture really trying to show, this paragraph or this section really trying to show me? So what I did for you is I went ahead and looked at paragraphs 5 and 6 and 7, all 3, because you have to be careful. I even made the mistake and stopped at the picture the first time, so I had to keep going and make sure I added the rest. So when I zoom in, so you can see it better, your kids can draw a hand. It talks about in paragraph 5, let me just double check, 12 titles have been printed of little golden books. Okay, so we might call that the topic sentence of the whole section, the main idea. About 12 different titles, and books and titles are plural, so we better make sure that we understand that we need to be talking about several books. Still in paragraph 5, one was named The Pokey Little Puppy, and it's still in print. The little main idea. 15 million copies are sold, more than any other uh, picture book. And I'm imagining they're talking about any picture book in history, because it didn't really say just from the Golden Books series, because there's lots of picture books in the world. So all of that, keep that in mind, was only about paragraph 5. So guess what? Since one of the answer choices, letter J, was only about paragraph 5, a little golden book that is still printed today and why it's so popular, that's singular, that's one book. It was only the first 3 fingers, and guess what? 29% of your students in Texas chose that. Almost 1 out of 3 kids said, I'm only going to read the paragraph in that section called Stories to Read and Enjoy. Well, just missing one word threw your kids off. Section means more than one paragraph, so we have to be careful to look at the words. All right, let me keep on going. Paragraph 6 starts, here's some other titles, some other books, because it said titles and stories to read and enjoy. So here comes some other stories, some examples. There was one called Little Miners that talks to the kids about a job. There's another book called Here Comes uh, the Parade, about Macy's Thanksgiving Parade. Another book was Dr. Dan, and uh, it was about how to stay safely, and it actually comes with some bandages, and that's a very important thing, because one of the answers is going to talk about, well, how about what the books come with. And the next one, paragraph 7, the one that I was going to accidentally leave off, I had to add some more fingers, books with records. So paragraph 7 says some of the books also come with other things called records. And nowadays, a lot of kids might not even know what a record is. And it talks about how to hear them. And so there's 9 little sections for paragraphs 5, 6, and 7 for the title called Stories to Read and Enjoy. So when I looked at the other answer choices, letter F said the topics, more than one, of some little golden books. There were several mentioned on the fingers. All the fingers talk about all of the books. And what some of the books came with, that was fingers 6 through 9. So you can either call them fingers or paragraphs, whatever you want to say, but when I make it visual using the fingers, that might help. Well, only a third of your kids chose the correct answer. That means 2 out of every 3 chose one of these. Let's find out why they would have chosen the wrong answers. Almost 20% chose G, the most popular little children's books. Okay. All of the sections talk about that. and how to listen to them. Well, how to listen to them was only finger 9, that record, uh, the records that you can buy. So since it only mentions it in one little section, because of this part, we're going to eliminate letter G, because what some books come with, well, some books came with band-aids that we saw. Some books, let me see, what was it? There was something else that one of the books came with, and I can't remember what it was, but there were at least 3 books that had things that came with them. And so when you read that section, let me see if I can scan it real quick. Bandages, the records. Um, looks like that's it. So 2 of the books, and so what some of the books came, paragraphs 6 through fingers 6 through 7, what some of the books came with the bandages and the records. Okay. Letter H says the title of the little golden, the number of little golden books printed and which ones are still available. Well, that was only mentioned in the first section. They only told us about how many books were printed of that first book, that one that was called the Pokey Little Puppy. Okay. And that it's still in print today. It didn't say why it's so popular. So that those first 3 sections, that the second finger was talking about why it's still popular. So the best main idea of a section is letter F. Now, let me fast forward to 4th grade and show you another question. And if you'll notice, it says, what is the best summary of paragraphs 7 through 10? Well, only 53% of the kids in Texas got this one correct. And summary, right away, your kids think, are they asking me about all of it? And they always think of summary as all of it. And so we've got to check the next word, because summary, some meaning add only some of it. So when they say paragraphs 7 through 10, then our fingers, our summary, question number 4, should only be what's in paragraph 7, 8, 9, and 10. I want you to take a look at the actual section. All your kids had to do for, what is this, question number 4, is find out the summary, the main idea of just this section. That's all they had to read. And so if it's not in this section, then I can't pick it as an answer choice. And so sometimes the danger of reading the entire passage or requiring kids to read the entire passage, that question wasn't asking about the entire passage. It was only asking about 4 paragraphs, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay? So let's take a look at how I wrote it out. Your kids would draw the hand, or if you get a training with me, you get a class set of these that you'll laminate. I just use them over, I just reprint them over and over so that I don't have to keep using dry erase or wet erase markers and cleaning them. So paragraph 7 talked about the bus chugging up the hill and the wheels groaning, one more day, One more day. This is the little boy Christopher uh, on the bus. He burst out. And so I'm going to do what I call a TMI. Sometimes TMI is too much information, but I'm going to do a teachable moment of instruction if we just need a little bit of guidance on dialogue, or a teachable moment of intervention if our kids are really struggling. So this is where you can do readvising, read editing, because we're going to merge reading and writing together. So if you look here, he burst out, and I changed it around so that I can teach the what I call the 5 c's: k, k, comma, k, k, quotation, k, k, capital. 3 c's that happen in a row when you're having dialogue. All right, he's done talking. K, k, closing, because you close the street with a stop sign. And k, k, quotation, because he's done talking. Now, if you look at me in the picture here, my mouth sometimes has a dimple in front of my mouth and a dimple in back of my mouth. And so I need my opening and my closing dimples before I talk and after I'm done talking. So the words that came out of his mouth in paragraph 8 were, all right. So the cool thing is, paragraph 9 has the bus driver calling him out. And so even though he told him to be quiet first, and then it had what we called the tag afterwards, I switched it around so we could practice that concept. He called him out, k, k, comma, k, k, quotation, k, k, capital. And until he's done talking, we don't put closing quotations. Christopher, quiet down back there. K, k, closing. I need to have a stop sign. And because we were addressing Christopher, we could have put a Christopher comma and put a lowercase on quiet, but he shouted his name, Christopher, exclamation. So we can stop the sentence there momentarily. Quiet down back there. K, k, closing. K, k, quotation. Excuse me. So all we have so far is him hearing the sound of the bus, shouting out, all right, and the bus driver calling him out to be quiet. Now, paragraph 10 is not him talking. I made a little cloud, which some of you call a thought bubble. He hadn't meant to yell. He'd never intended to yell. It just happens sometimes. So paragraph 10 has him thinking, and the reader being able to get inside his mind to find out what his thoughts were. And so, since those were the main ideas, we've got to use that as our guide to figure out which is the correct answer. So, Christopher tells his friends Timothy and Rashid that he doesn't think he can go a whole day without getting into trouble. Well, he never speaks those words, only all right. That's the only thing that comes out of his mouth. When you tell somebody, you're talking. And so he's only thinking to himself that he's always getting into trouble. But a fourth of your kids chose that answer. G, Christopher compares how he's feeling to how the bus chugs up the hill. That's only paragraph 7. And so if your kids only read one paragraph, they might have thought the main idea of paragraph 7 and they just stopped. Well, it's not even him, how he's feeling. It's about how the bus is feeling. And so I would substitute that word, and that's only for paragraph 7. So we would eliminate that answer. Christopher has a problem that he shares with his friends Timothy and Rashad. Nowhere, anywhere is he sharing a problem with his friends. His friends Timothy and Rashad are not even mentioned in paragraphs 7 through 10. But Christopher is too loud on the bus. That's paragraph 8. and he gets in trouble with the driver, paragraphs 9 and 10. Since that's the best summary of some of the sections, just 7 through 10, then we would be able to choose letter J. Now, I want to remind you that there's a bottom part of my graphic organizer that says actors remember more story sequence. If you would actually have your kids act out those 4 paragraphs, if it was in the play, then it can be part of the summary, the main idea of that section. If we didn't act it out, then it wasn't in there and we can't choose it. So that's what I would recommend that you do for that one, because we don't want half of our kids in May missing a question that's only a summary of about 4 paragraphs. So I do have one more for you. 3 questions. This last one, again, is only about one section. Paragraphs 5 and 6 are mainly about. And if you look closely, the correct answer is letter F, and only 41% of the kids chose that answer. So let me show you how, again, to use the hand so that we can get a better job. And this was number 10 for 4th grade. And so whenever they're asking your students about a section, they're not having to read the whole passage. It's just 2 paragraphs, 2 parts of the passage. So let's look and see what I wrote in for main ideas. Paragraphs 5 and 6, okay? Paragraphs 5 and 6. Let me come over here. Paragraphs 5 and 6, here they are. That's all they had to do is read paragraph 5 and paragraph 6, okay? All right. If you read the paragraph, there's an invention that was made that allows you to cut glass, okay? And that invention made it easier to make marbles. 100 years later, transition phrase right here, another invention was made, a marble making machine that could make small lumps of metal glass into perfect spheres, okay? It lowered the price of marbles even more. Now that last sentence, we're going to have to draw a conclusion that somehow the price of marbles was lowered because of this first paragraph, or else they wouldn't have told us excuse me, that the machine lowered the prices even more. So this invention turned marbles into perfect spheres, okay? Sphere is like a globe, like a ball. So let's look and see what I did. I used my graphic organizer just for paragraph 5, so we can say, how is paragraph 5 going to make things cheaper? Because I'm gonna have to infer something here. There was an easy way to make more marbles in the first sentence of paragraph 5. There were some special scissors to cut melted glass. It makes, and they can make them and sell them in large quantities. more people could buy them. That's an effect. We'll talk about that in a second. And glass marbles became popular around the world. Okay, so if I have my hand here, I have my hand. Sometimes I'm going to have to read between the lines. So I have this here that they're going to be cheaper. Somehow we're going to be able to find out that they're cheaper. And so reading between the lines is what some of you call infer. So I put my hand in between my fingers and then I rub my hairs on my hand. So infer is reading between the lines, and we're going to find out here they're cheaper. Why are we saying that they're cheaper? Because more people can buy them and they became very popular. So I would imagine that because of making them in large quantities, that it's going to allow the price to go down, and that way more people could buy them. Because if a price is cheaper on something, then more people can buy it. So since paragraph 5 talks about this invention that allows lots of people to buy them, and this invention making them imperfect spheres that lowers it even more. Let's look and see the answer choices and why we can pick the one that we did. Paragraphs 5 and 6 are mainly about inventions lowering the cost of marbles. Paragraphs 5 and 6 are the two inventions lowering the cost of marbles. As you saw, I showed paragraph 6 came out and told us that it lowered the cost of marbles. Paragraph 5, we had to infer, we had to read between the lines. G, glassmakers figured out how to cut marbles easy. That was only one sentence in the whole passage, but 1/3 of your students said one sentence is about 2 entire paragraphs. So that wouldn't make sense. H, glass is melted in order to make a marble. That's only 2 sentences in the whole section. The shape of marbles has improved over time. They never talked about it. It just said perfect sphere, and it never said that there was anything wrong with the shapes in the first place, but 15% of your kids chose that. So these little distractors are not even mentioned, or they're only mentioned in 1 or 2 sentences. And so since inventions are in both paragraphs and the prices getting lower by cause and effect, because we can check paragraph 5 to see what in the world would make it where more people could buy them, more people produce them, so there's more marbles, uh, more people can afford them. So that's how I would do these questions. So the reason I'm sharing that is because since all of us are going to have hands on test day, one way, not the way, is you could draw or trace your hand and say, okay, what am I just talking about one paragraph where I have a topic sentence, a main idea, some sorting specific supporting sentences, and a conclusion for that paragraph? Am I talking about an introduction, a body, and a conclusion of a whole passage? Or am I just talking about a few sections, and so each finger would be a section? And so I hope that that helps. Think about the ideas of palm. Email me at writing_doctor@yahoo.com if you have any questions. You can message me. Please share this video if you are a reading teacher or an ELAR teacher who's having to teach reading and writing, because I did make a writing connection there with the dialogue on one of the questions. So thank you guys, and God bless.